I'm Kent Klitgaard, and I've done this paper with a bunch of people, including Charlie Hall and two of my students, Michael Sciatti and Maria Fargnoli, and my colleague Udine. And I'm different than everybody here because I don't think you can possibly relegate something as complex as human behavior to physics. I understood all the equations, I simply disagree with. In James' presentation, you talked about fixed and variable costs, and one thing that happens is that if most of a business's costs are in fixed costs, and competition occurs, and does what competition is supposed to do, which is reduces price to marginal cost, you can never generate the money to pay off the loans. And therefore, in terms of economic history, there have been two strategies. One is monopolization, and two is to ask for government regulation, or three, a combination of the two. And it's my contention that as the economy monopolizes, it inherently stagnates. So part of the stagnation is certainly due to energy. And part of stagnation is the internal dynamics of the capital accumulation process. Now, kind of growth theory is in shambles. Paul Krugman had written this article, Jen had written about it, I had reviewed his manuscript, and I have a different interpretation when he says economists mistook beauty for truth. The beauty wasn't just the equational system. The beauty was the idea that capitalism is a nearly perfect system, that everybody behaves rationally. You can therefore relegate the entire economy to one person. Markets are perfectly competitive. That's not the real world. Yesterday, Eric had said, you have to understand this stuff because it opens doors, but it's my contention it opens the door to a very small and very dark closet that won't give you anything.
Full of spiders.
Herman Daly's had this wonderful quote about John Stuart Mill that their professors might have known about it, but they didn't feel it worthy of transmission. So in terms of growth theory, I know that Robert and a lot of people start with Solow, but there was a lot of growth theory before Solow. When I gave my presentation in Vancouver last year, I asked who had read it, and only Peter Victor had actually read Herod and Domar's article. But beyond Herod and Domar, there's three other people I would like you to add to your pantheon of people who explain growth and stagnation. The first is Mikhail Kalecki, who was a Polish contemporary of John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was wondering why the greatest economic minds of Europe couldn't understand, but this provincial Pole could. That's because he had written everything in Polish 3 years later. Realized that being Jewish, communist, and Polish weren't good in the 1930s. He took a sabbatical to Oxford and stayed there, produced some great work. His student, Joseph Steindl, produced Maturity and Stagnation in the American Economy. Then 50 years ago this year, Paul Barana and Paul Sweezy wrote Monopoly Capital. And there is something that, there's a thread that ties before, that for Kalecki, monopolization can be measured by the degree of monopoly or the ability to mark up prices, which is the inverse of labor share. And so there's great distributional quality. Steindl took up his theme and said what you get, and Domar also took up this theme, is with a monopolized economy, the biggest threat to investment is the buildup of excess capacity. And he had a long explanation of how excess and why excess capacity built up. And so you can go on to the basics of Barana and Sweezy. Is because we have fossil fuels, we can generate this huge surplus, but we can't find ways to spend it. So if we want to basically live within nature's limits, conspicuous consumption cannot be the way we achieve that. So I've got all kinds of slides that I don't have time to talk, but it just goes through the data could you forward to the model? Well, so what I tried to do was build an econometric model. There's the same growth in investment, there's year-to-year growth, there's the decline, there's GDP growth in Europe. Oh, this is good. Anybody who thinks that you know, the private sector is doing a good job, fixed investment is declining. So we've become more debt-ridden. There's a graph. There, capacity utilization is just plummeted. So that should stagnate the economy from a social perspective. So I built up an equational model, a multiple regression where I had the dependent variable being the growth rate. So I adjusted for capacity utilization, oil price, changes in fixed investment, changes in personal consumption, and the debt outstanding, and got some fairly encouraging results.
Conclusion, please.
The conclusion is that we had a very high R squared, a good F statistic. All the variables were statistically significant at the 5% or 6% level, which tells me that both energy inputs and the social institutional structure matter in explaining not only growth, but the stagnation that we see in the graphical data. Thank you.
I'm afraid we only have just 20 minutes left. One question, if any, right now.
I'll take a quick question. So you co-authored your 2011 book with Charles Hall, Energy and the Wealth of Nations, Understanding Biophysical Economics.
Yes.
So in your presentation, you said you don't believe that economics or the humanities can be reduced to physics, that you're using a physics platform. I wonder if you could elaborate on that for us.
Well, Charlie had suggested that principles of biophysical economics, and our editor and publisher said, well, biophysics was an entirely separate, largely invented by J.D. Bernal. And so we took a more social title, kind of stole the title at our publisher's suggestion from Adam Smith, added energy to it. And so trying to look at the world from a more classical perspective where many, many parts of human and natural life are brought into the process.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think either of us believe economics should be either natural sciences or social sciences. We want to integrate them, and we believe that conventional economics is focused almost entirely on social sciences, and I believe, and Kent too, that that's wrong.